The second part of question 26 asks students to analyse how progressive overload can be applied effectively to aerobic training. This question was worth 5 marks, and this was following the previous format of where you've had an A, question 26A, and now we're doing the B, where it builds on from question A. So we're asking students to analyse how progressive overload can be applied effectively to aerobic training. How can we apply the principle of progressive overload to aerobic training? When we're being asked to analyse, we need to look at and relate the implications of progressive overload when applied to aerobic training. And we'll come back to that in a minute, but we'll have a look at it, a couple of responses. First of all, we'll go to the syllabus area, and you'll notice here, principles of training, first one being progressive overload. On this side of the page it says, so we've got to learn about. The Learn To states, analyse how the principles of training can be applied to both aerobic and resistance training. In this case, we're looking at aerobic training. Right? It doesn't ask anything about weight training. We need to talk about how can progressive overload be applied to aerobic training. So we'll just have a look at an answer here. And we'll go through this answer. It says, to increase aerobic performance, an athlete must constantly increase the duration or intensity of their training. Progressive overload involves constantly training beyond previous capacities and in turn increases the athlete's aerobic capacity. So we've got an explanation and understanding of what progressive overload is. We've then also showed how we could apply it to look at some of the different variables that may exist in changing or continuing on with progressive overload. If we go back to our answer. For example, an athlete who runs 1,000 metres in 4 minutes would implement progressive overload by running 1,200 metres in 4 minutes and later 1,500 metres in 4 minutes. The constant increase in distance despite no additional time makes the athlete train beyond his previous capabilities, which in turn increases his aerobic capacity. This can also be done by decreasing time rather than changing distance. So 2 of the variables that need to be included in progressive overload have been stated here. By progressively increasing the difficulty of the activity, the individual aims to achieve realistic goals that push beyond their previous limitations. So continually throughout this answer, we've gone through and we've been able to apply progressive overload. Okay? Some other parts here. So remembering that in order to analyse, we need to draw out and relate the implications of progressive overload when it is applied effectively to aerobic training. For example, an athlete becomes accustomed to the intensities of a form of aerobic training or his training session over time, so he increases the duration, which we spoke about here. Okay, duration. Duration's also been changed up here. Increases the duration of each maybe sprint or running they're doing, which forces the athlete's body to adapt to its increased workload and become aerobically fitter. And that's exactly what we've said in this answer here, which has been stated. Okay, we've gone through and said what progressive overload is. We've said how some of the variables could be changed throughout the answer. We've even given an example of some variables that could have been used. Okay, so overall it's a great response. So well done. Just some points overall for involving all students' answers here was that a little bit concerned about students' actual understanding of what progressive overload is. Students were able to relate it to aerobic training, but again, we go back to the analyse part. We're still going back to the key term. All right, how would they need to incorporate progressive overload into their training? Overall, from students, the examples were very good. Okay, students have really improved in their examples, and a number of examples were used to support their answers in this case. So overall, it was quite well answered by most students.